Hello everyone, welcome to Scholar Shop. Today the chapter that we will be doing is Discovering Tut, the Saga Continues by A.R. Williams. Before I start, I would like you all to have your book Hornbill just before you so that as I speak you can make your notes side by side. Let's get started. So the chapter that we are doing is Discovering Tut, the Saga Continues by A.R. Williams. So what is this chapter about? So this chapter is about King Tut, King Tutankhamun, his history, his family background and the various kind of projects or excavations that were carried out to understand or unravel the mysteries of his past. So King Tut was just a teenager when he died, and he was the last heir of a very powerful dynasty that had ruled Egypt. And as we know, like all the other rulers of Egypt, when they died, their bodies were mummified. Even King Tut, when he died, his body was also mummified. So in 1922, the first excavation or the first discovery of King Tut's tomb or his mummy was made, and it was made by Howard Carter. And he was a British archaeologist, and after that, two more excavations or projects were carried out to understand King Tut's history. So in this chapter, we will try and understand the family background of King Tutankhamun in part 1, and in the second part we will understand the excavations or the projects that were made to unravel the mysteries of his past. As I said, there were total 3 projects. So we will understand each project or each discovery one by one. So if I were to talk about the theme of this chapter, then it would be that it analyzes a man's desire to understand the roots of our civilization, or to understand our past, our history, where we come from, and what was our society like so many years back, and what was the kind of system of governance, and all of these things, and draw a sort of a comparison with the contemporary. So it is our desire to do this, to understand our past, so that in future we do not make the same mistakes, or we try and understand the stories of our past, how we have evolved, understand all of this process of change. So all of this. So King Tut, he was a boy king and he was the last heir of his dynasty. He had an untimely death. He died at a very young age. As I said, he died when he was just a teenager. And he died 3,300 years ago. So that's how long back in time we are talking about. And the reason or the cause for his death is still not known. I mean, why he died, it could be a murder or it could be any other cause, we do not know yet. And even after so many excavations, so many projects, we have not been able to find out what was the cause of his death. Also, at what age did he die? All of these questions are unanswered. The process to understand the answers for these questions, to get the answers to these questions, still exists. And that is why the saga continues. The process to unravel the mysteries of his past continues, and the saga continues. That is why that is written in the title of this chapter. So now let us understand part 1, as I said, about Tutankhamun and his family background. So let's start. So we will now be discussing part 1, that is about Tut and his family background. So we know that King Tutankhamun was just a teenager when he died, and he was a boy king, and he was the last heir, as in the last successor of a very powerful dynasty in Egypt. Now, who were the people who ruled before him, and what all did they do in their reign? So in this part 1 we will discuss his predecessors and what all they did. So first we have Amenhotep III, and he was the father or the grandfather of Tutankhamun, and he was a powerful pharaoh. Pharaoh was basically a title which was given to the king in ancient Egypt. So he was a powerful king, and he ruled for 2 decades. And he ruled for 2 2 decades at the height of the 18th dynasty's golden age. So that is Amenhotep III. Now coming to Amenhotep IV, who succeeded Amenhotep III, and his was actually the strangest period in all of the dynasties and all of the periods that had existed. Everybody had their own period, but his was the strangest period. The period in which he ruled was the strangest because of the kind of reforms or the kind of decisions that he had made. First decision was that he started to bring a change and he started worshipping Aten, which is the sun disk. And he also changed his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten. And as we know that Aten is the sun disk, and in his name, if we now use this meaning, the meaning of his name becomes the servant of Aten, the sun disk, who he used to worship. He also changed the capital. So the initial capital was the old city of Thebes, and he changed it to Akhenaten, and which is now we call it Amarna also. Then next what he did was a very terrible thing, and that was he attacked Amun. He was a major god, and how did he attack him? He smashed his images, he smashed his temples, and made a lot of destruction. So this was a horrific time. And Ray Johnson, who is the Director General of University of Chicago's Research Center, said that considering what all Amenhotep IV or Akhenaten has done in his period, it must have been a horrific time. I mean, considering the dynasty is coming to an end, the ruler Amenhotep got a little wacky. So that is Amenhotep IV's period or his reign. After Amenhotep IV came Smenkhkare. So this ruler actually appeared for a very brief period, and it is so brief that if we consider his role in history, it is there is hardly any trace also of him left. I mean, that short a period he ruled, and not a lot of things that he did that we remember him by. So there's hardly any trace left. Now after him came our King Tut, King Tutankhaten, and he actually changed his name to Tutankhamun, is the living image of Amun. So Tutankhaten, Aten we know is the sun disk, and he changed his name to Amun, which we know that Amenhotep IV had attacked Amun, who was a major god. So he changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun, and this means the living image of the god Amun. Tutankhaten in his reign mainly focused on the restoration of the old ways which had existed previously, and he wanted to bring them back in his reign. He reigned for 9 years, and after 9 years he died, and we do not know the cause of his death even till today. Why did he die? At what age did he die? These questions are still unanswered. His was an untimely death. He died when he was just a teenager, and a mysterious death because we don't know the cause. So, King Tut, he died in the ancient Egyptian cemetery, which is known as the Valley of the Kings. So, the cemetery in which his body was buried is known as the Valley of the Kings. Now, King Tut's body was actually mummified. What does it mean to mummify something, or what is this process of mummification? So, when a person passes away, the process to preserve a dead human body by removing its internal organs, then treating it with resin and other elements, and then trying to bandage it also to preserve it, to secure it, is known as mummification. So, basically, preserving a human body after it has died by embalming it is known as mummification. So just like all the Egyptian rulers, when they died, their bodies were mummified, even King Tut, when he died, his body was also mummified. And then his mummy was further studied by archaeologists, and that's how we get to know about him. Now, when King Tut died, his body was buried with a lot of artifacts of gold. His mummy was buried, was put in a coffin, and inside that coffin and other boxes that were found with his coffin, there were a lot of gold artifacts that were found. Gold artifacts, even things like bronze razor, board games, wine and food, and linen undergarments, and all of these things were were also found with the dead body which was found. Now, why is that? It is because Egyptians believed in the concept of afterlife. Now, what is this concept of afterlife? So basically, they believed that a person who dies today will be reborn with the same features that they have today in their next life. And obviously, if I am reborn, then in my next life I will need some basic amenities, some necessities, some essentials. So that is why they buried things like food, wine, all of these things, so that they can be used in the next life by the person who has died. Now there is a line in this chapter which I would like to explain. It is stunning artifacts in gold, their eternal brilliance meant to guarantee resurrection, cause the sensation at the time of discovery and still get the most attention. Now what does this line mean? That their eternal brilliance meant to guarantee resurrection. The eternal brilliance of the artifacts that were found with him, of all of these things, were meant to guarantee resurrection. So resurrection is the act of bringing something back to life, something that has passed away, something that is no longer in use, something that is dead, back to its existence or back to use. Now, the artifacts in gold which were buried with King Tut were so beautiful. Their shine was eternal, their eternal brilliance, their shine or their beauty was everlasting. It was so nice that it appeared that they have brought the dead King Tut back to life. They were so beautiful, so appealing, and it appeared that they had brought the king back to life. The person who was seeing it, it appeared that the king had reappeared in front of him or had come back to life. So that is the meaning of that sentence. Now coming to the Pharaoh's curse. So there was a curse which was associated with the Pharaoh King Tut, and that was if somebody disturbed his tomb or his dead body or his mummy, then misfortune would fall upon that person. Now these kind of curses were often associated with the dead so that thieves, plunderers, all of these people would not attack the dead in search of the artifacts, because thieves always wanted these things in gold and all of these artifacts, so they would go and attack these mummies. So curses came into being to scare people to not actually touch the mummy, to not actually disturb it, and hence these kind of curses were associated that if you touch the mummy, then misfortune will fall on you or unfortunate events will take place in your life. So this was basically part 1, which was about Tut and his family background. Let us now move to part 2. So, now in part 2, we will study the investigations or the projects that were made to study King Tut. So basically, as I have told you, there were total 3 investigations or 3 projects, or 3 times the body was studied, and all of these 3 times different kind of method was used and different kind of things were actually discovered. New things were discovered with each investigation. So we will now discuss all 3 investigations or projects made to study King Tut after his death through his mummy in this part. So starting with Howard Carter, in 1922, he discovered King Tut's mummy, and for the first time, he was the one who discovered it, and he and his team, they found his burial chamber, and it was 26 feet underground, and they found his tomb, they found his mummy, and even though the tomb or the burial chamber had been attacked earlier, the contents of his coffin or his tomb were intact. So the contents were intact, and he was the first person, a British archaeologist, to find the mummy. Then what he found inside was objects for afterlife. As I had told you that he found a bronze razor, linen undergarments, board games, wine and food and other things which the Egyptians thought they could carry with them in the once they were reborn in their next life. So those things were also found. Now, what did Howard Carter find in his discovery with regard to the coffin or the King Tut's mummy? So he found 3 coffins, and King Tut's body or the mummy was found in a gold-plated coffin. And the first coffin he opened, he found a shroud adorned with garlands and olive leaves and lotus petals and cornflowers and all of those things. Now, what is a shroud? A shroud is basically a cloth which is used to wrap a dead body, and he found it adorned. It was decorated with garlands, olive leaves, and all of these things. Next, when he found King Tut's mummy, he found that when he opened the next coffin, he found King Tut's mummy. And what did he find? That the ritual raisins had hardened the mummy cemented the mummy to the base of the coffin. Now, as you remember that I had told you that in the process of mummification, to preserve a human body after it has died, they used raisins to kind of treat it and preserve it. They used raisins to preserve the human body after death. Now, these ritual raisins, which had been used by the priests or the Egyptians 3,300 years ago to preserve King Tut's body, they had hardened over time, and they had hardened in such a way that they had stuck King Tut's mummy to the base of the coffin. And now, obviously, to study a mummy, you have to remove it from the coffin and then study it. But now the raisins had stuck it to the base of the coffin. So, how was Howard Carter going to remove it? He thought that maybe if I put it in the sun, considering it's Egypt, it's so hot, maybe the blazing sunlight will help loosen the raisins and then he can take it out. So, the blazing sunlight heated the mummy to 149 degrees Fahrenheit, but still the raisins were hard as rock and nothing happened. So the only thing that he could do to remove the mummy from the coffin that it was stuck to was to chisel it out. So he decided to chisel the consolidated material underneath King Tut's limbs and from the trunk of this coffin. Only then could he study it. So King Tut's mummy had been, King Tut was such a wealthy ruler, and all of these rulers believed in the concept of afterlife and that they could take away their wealth, they could take away their jewels with them in the next life. So even King Tut's body had so many necklaces and so many gold artifacts, bracelets and all of these things. He had so many things in his chest. He had necklaces and all of those things. So if Howard Carter had not actually chiseled out the mummy the mummy from the trunk, then thieves or plunderers or all of these people would have attacked the mummy in search of all of these wealth that the Egyptians thought they could take with them, and they would have destroyed the mummy. So Howard Carter, in his defense, had done the right thing by chiseling out the mummy from the base of the trunk to study it, removing the necklaces that were there, removing all of these adornments so that people or thieves do not attack it and then destroy it. So in his defense, he had done the right thing. Now, Howard Carter he removed the head from the main body because he wanted to remove all of these adornments that King Tut was wearing. He also severed all the other joints, and then he took all of these joints and then he reassembled them on a wooden box with a sand base, and then he also put in a bit of padding to actually cover up the damage that he had done. So this way he chiseled the mummy from the trunk, then he removed the head, severed all the other joints and then reassembled them on another place. So this is what Howard Carter had done. And obviously this is what his discovery was. He had discovered so much wealth, collars, necklaces, bracelets, rings, sheaths, everything for King Tut. His coffins were full of gold artifacts. So this was Howard Carter's discovery. Now moving to the next time the mummy was studied, which was in 1968. More than 40 years after Howard Carter had studied it in 1922. This was done by an anatomy professor. And this time he used another form of technology to actually study the mummy. Here we know that he had almost nothing. Howard Carter had almost nothing to study the mummy, and he had tried his best, but the only way out was to chisel it out. But the anatomy professor had used the X-ray to study the mummy. He X-rayed the mummy, and from his body was covered with the ritual raisins. So when he X-rayed the mummy, beneath the ritual raisins, he found that the breastbone and the front ribs of King Tut's body were missing. This is such a huge fact that has been uncovered in this study. I mean, it's such a breakthrough. It could help in realizing, in understanding what is the cause of his death, what is the cause of King Tut's death. He was just a teenager when he died. So these kind of facts that come out from these studies are important in making breakthroughs in understanding the history of the Egyptian ruler. So this was the second time the mummy was studied. Now coming to the third time the mummy was studied, which was by Zahi Hawass, who is the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, and he was the one who studied the mummy the third time. And this project has been extensively described in the book. This actually project to study King Tut's mummy was part of the Egyptian Mummy Project. Now, what is the Egyptian Mummy Project? So the Egyptian Mummy Project was started in 2003, and they had to study these mummies. They had studied about 600 mummies, and in 2005 they started to study King Tut's mummy. And how did they study it? Using what? They used a CT scanner, a computed tomography to study King Tut's mummy, and a portable CT scanner was given to them by the National Geographic Society and Siemens. They were given a portable CT scanner, and King Tut's mummy was one of the first mummies to be studied by a CT scanner. What is the CT scan? So, and what does it produce, or if we CT scan something, what do we get? So basically, a CT scan will give you hundreds of X-rays in cross section to create a 3D virtual body. So there will be like hundreds of X-rays which will be stacked like slices of a bread. So they'll be really thin, and they will be stacked like slices of a bread in cross section. And if you look at them from another angle, it will appear like a 3D object, something that is three-dimensional. So that is how clear and that is how amazingly a CT scan can help in studying something like King Tut's body. So when the CT scan was done on King Tut's body, 1700 digital X-rays in cross-section were produced. 1700. From head to toe, 1700 digital X-rays in cross-section were made, and they were stacked like the slices of a bread, and they provided like a virtual 3D picture of King Tut's body. And it was so detailed that 0.62 millimeter slices of King Tut's head were made, and it was so intricate that you could literally see the eerie details of his head in that CT scan. So you can see how improved and how advanced the technology is when we are talking about 2005, when the CT scan was done on King Tut's body. So all of this CT scanning and all of this procedure was done on 5th January 2005. Now imagine, obviously Zahi Hawass and his team are going to take King Tut's mummy from his coffin, and they're going to take it to the place where the CT scan is going to be done. They're going to go to his burial chamber. So 5th January 2005 is such an important day, such a momentous day, and it's going to be so exciting. So a lot of people actually gather at his burial chamber on 5th January 2005, and they're also excited to see what's going to happen. So some of the people who are gathered, they are reading some guidebooks, others are wondering about the pharaoh's curse. Some of them are looking at the murals on the walls. Murals are basically paintings which are done directly on the wall, so they are admiring those. Some of them are looking at the gilded face of King Tut on his lid, on the lid of his coffin. So gilded is basically something that is thinly covered with gold. So they are looking at the lid of the coffin, and some of them are looking at the workmen carrying out their work. So it's such an exciting day. Now then Zahi Hawass's workmen, they take the mummy, King Tut's mummy, and they are going to take it for the CT scan. So the atmosphere or the weather is a bit eerie. There are grey clouds, and it appears a bit scary, but they take the mummy and they are going to do the CT scan with the portable CT scanner that the National Geographic Society and Simons has gifted them. So they're taking it when they suddenly realize that the cooler fans of the CT scanner, the $1 million CT scanner, such advanced technology has stopped working. So it's really dreadful. And one of the guards actually jokes and says that what if it's the curse of the pharaoh? But they use substitute fans for the CT scanner, and finally after a 3-hour-long procedure they have done the CT scanning of King Tut's mummy. Then they finally take the mummy and they put it back into the coffin and they put it back in the burial chamber in the tomb, and where it had been kept 3,300 years ago. And now what is the result of the CT scan? What have they gotten out of the CT scan? So as we know that they got 1700 digital x-rays and cross-section and all of these things. So the scanner also revealed clear images of neck vertebrae, hand, ribs and a transection of the skull. So obviously all of these results are very important in understanding the history of King Tut. So how did he die, and revealing all of the mysteries of his past. So finally it was a success. Zahi Hawass, who was leading this operation, was really anxious about the entire thing when the fans stopped working, or if it will be a success or not, and he couldn't sleep the last night. But this time he says that now I'm finally relieved and I can have a peaceful sleep. So that is the entire procedure of the CT scan, what it revealed. Now after the CT scan was done, when Zahi Hawass and his team looked up into the sky, they saw the constellation of Orion. Now what is a constellation? Is a group of stars, and they are appearing in different shapes and different sizes. So when they looked in the sky, what appeared to them was the constellation Orion, and that was the constellation which symbolized Osiris, the god of afterlife. And it appeared as if Osiris, the god of afterlife, was looking over King Tut's coffin, and he was looking over his body, and he was watching over the boy king. It appears as if the constellation is placed as such, or it looks as such, as if the god of afterlife is looking over the body of the boy king. Now we will also see what were the different kind of changes that have occurred from 1922 to 2005. There are two major changes. First is in terms of technology, as we have discussed that in 1922 Howard Carter literally had no choice but to chisel the body. But in 2005 we have advanced with X-rays in the middle to having such advanced technology of CT scan, which produces like a 3D virtual image of whatever it is scanning. So such such intricate slices of the head and such intricate things it can take out. So we have advanced in technology. Second thing, we have evolved as in the study of historical artifacts, people or mummies, is that earlier we used to always focus on materialistic things, artifacts in gold, treasures, funerary treasures, beads, rings, all of those things which are materialistic. But today, rather than focusing on these materialistic treasures and all of those things, we focus on the stories behind people, the stories of their past, why they died, the historical significance of these people. So we focus on the moral things rather than the materialistic things. So this was the entire explanation of the chapter. If you enjoyed watching this video, then do like, share and subscribe to Scholar Sharp for more such videos. You can also go to our Instagram page, which is by the name of Scholar Sharp, for the updates on the upcoming videos. Thank you.